My wife, Terra 30F, and I, Luke 30M, have been together for 6 years now. We met through some mutual friends at a Christmas party. We struck up a conversation, mostly about our workout routines, and before the night was done we decided to meet at the gym 2 days later. As it turned out, we both had memberships to the same gym. Just I typically worked out in the morning, and she worked out in the afternoon, so we had never seen each other there. We became gym partners from there. I switched to working out with her after work, and as you probably guessed, what started out as a platonic gym relationship turned into a romantic relationship within 2 weeks. Our relationship went pretty fast from that point on. We only dated for 8 months before getting engaged and were married about 13 months after. We have a ton in common. Besides prioritizing our fitness, we have the same taste in movies, love to try new restaurants, and are always down for a trivia night. Meeting each other's needs was also a big priority for each of us from day one. I have a high libido, and Terra was the first girlfriend I ever had that could, or even wanted to, keep up with it. On the flip side, she loves being massaged, calls it being rubbed on, and I am almost always happy to oblige. The biggest thing we had in common though was being a perfect match when it came to what we wanted our family to look like. Terra and I both wanted exactly 2 kids, the hope being 1 boy and 1 girl, but 2 of the same is also great. We also want to have them young. Our agreement was that her last day on birth control would be the day before our wedding. The thinking here is just that we want to enjoy our kids when we are still in top shape, the other being we would like to still be around for any grandkids, even if our children wait to have their own. While those are a couple of reasons for this, a more self-focused reason is that our kids would likely be out of the house by the time we hit 50, allowing us to focus more on each other in retirement. The plan was going great. We had to have gotten pregnant within the first couple of weeks after our wedding. The pregnancy went pretty well. Terra had the stereotypical issues such as morning sickness, swollen ankles, stuff like that. Celeste was born on December 8th, and we couldn't be happier. Over the past 3.5 years she has been a source of constant joy for Terra and I. We waited for Terra to fully recover before trying for baby number 2. It was about 4 to 5 months. Terra had gotten right back into the gym once she got the okay from her doctor and was looking as amazing as ever. After getting a bit out of shape myself during her pregnancy and in the first couple of months following Celeste's birth, I also found myself in need of gym time. We made it work pretty well. Terra and I always had a healthy life throughout our entire relationship, and it was turbocharged initially when we started going for baby number 2. Honestly, I think we both thought we should make the best of this because she would probably be pregnant right away, just like after our wedding. That's when the months began to click on. We were still having sex regularly, but after the 5th month Terra decided to talk to her general practitioner about it, and they said it can take time. That typically most fertility specialists will say you should give it a year. So we did that. Towards the end of that year, I will admit the sex part was starting to feel more chore-like. I still enjoyed it, but a lot of the passion seemed to have evaporated and it became just part of the weekly routine. After that first year, Terra had her OBGYN do some preliminary tests. They came back relatively normal. We continued on for another 6 months of trying, being very diligent to do all the recommendations we got from our doctors. We were taking the right supplements, eating the right things, following the ovulation charts, having sex every other day, pretty much anything we were told. After some months of this, it was time to see a reproductive endocrinologist. Between initial consultations, basic appointments, follow-up appointments with less common tests, this whole process ended up taking around 7 months. By the end, we had figured out that we were both the problem. I have an extremely low sperm count. On top of that, what I do have is not the best. Doctor says my swimmers have low motility and most are not very viable anyway. Terra got very bad news too. She has some blockages in her fallopian tubes, making the path for both sperm and egg much more difficult. That wasn't it though. They did an antibody test and found that Terra's immune system was anti-sperm, meaning her immune system was treating my sperm cells like they were strep throat and going for the kill on sight. During our last appointment, when we learned about the immune response, I just point blank asked the doctor how we managed to conceive right away despite all these issues. The doctor very bluntly said, "Honestly, your first child is a miracle baby. The fact you managed to conceive naturally at all was overcoming very poor odds. The fact you managed to have an issue-free pregnancy follow was even more unlikely, but it happened." I just said back, "So it was just a total fluke?" He responded, "If you want to put it that way, yes, that child was born against all odds." We didn't give up at this point, the main option being IUI. We did 4 of these, but between the cost of the procedure and the trigger shot, none of which was covered by insurance and cost us $700 out of pocket. After 4 of those and no success, things were very tight. We didn't have much savings in the first place. The only option we really had left was IVF. The problem is that the whole process is over $20,000. It will take us forever to save up that much. We just work regular jobs and have one daughter already. Our families aren't any different than us, they don't have the funds to send our way, not at once or in that sum. I told Terra we could start putting money away for that, but she seems to be in a state of despair over the whole thing. I know she didn't want to have kids after 30, and when she turned 30 she literally said out loud, "You have to get me pregnant this year." I began putting a little money away each month, but Terra turns 31 in 9 days and she told me to stop wasting my time. She says it's too late, and that our dreams are over and we just need to accept that. These last 8 months have been very trying. Terra has not been herself. She hasn't been going to the gym, and has indulged in comfort food more often than ever before. Our dates have become infrequent. They slowed after we had Celeste, but we still managed to get some alone time 2 to 3 times a month. Now it's more like once every 6 or 7 weeks. Our sex life has dropped off quite a bit. It's still there, but Terra seems to have this what's the point attitude anymore. I am doing my best to be comforting. She still lets me rub on her every night, so there is still some of that connection. I think that is helping, as generally speaking she will be receptive to sex, cuddling, or falling asleep together afterwards. I've suggested counseling, but she doesn't think she needs it. Celeste seems to be the only thing that really gets Terra up and seeming like her old self. I'm just hoping we can work through this disappointment. I know it's hard. It's been hard on me. We may not ever have a second child, but I think with a little time and a little work, we can be just as happy as a family of 3. I'm getting to the point I don't even know what to do anymore. I haven't given up hope, but it is definitely getting harder. Our daughter just turned 6 years old, and Christmas is upon us. What should be a happy time for us every year between her birthday and the holidays is actually rather depressing. I find myself starting to resent my wife. Unfortunately, things have not improved one bit in the last few years since we found out that conceiving naturally would be virtually impossible. My wife, she's just not the same person she was. I know we always wanted to have 2 kids, I know we wanted to have them young, but that didn't work out. Since it didn't work out, she just kind of quit. She is still a good mom. In fact, only when she is interacting with Celeste do I ever see the woman I fell in love with. I know she was depressed after finding out, I get that, I was too. The problem I have now is she won't do anything about it. I have encouraged her to go to therapy for a while now and she just flatly refuses. I can only do so much, although it often feels like I do everything. We both have always worked. Basically have the same schedule. She goes in an hour later than me and I get off an hour earlier than her. It's the at-home part that feels so unbalanced. We had always been somewhat even on sharing the load around the house. When we were going through those years trying to no avail, I began doing more around the house, and giving her more relaxed time. When we found out, that went to hyperdrive. I was basically doing all of it. I figured it would course correct in time, but it hasn't, not even a little. I actually don't mind too much unless she's complaining about something I didn't get done. That's when we really have our arguments because I can't put that aside. It's really triggering for me. I try talking to her about it, or about how she talks to me when something isn't done, but she always says she is just having a hard time. Usually cites being stressed and that when the house is out of sorts, it makes the stress worse. If I bring up how she talks to me about it, she usually apologizes, but nothing changes. Sometimes she doesn't do that, just plays the victim and asks why I want to make her feel awful. I just wish I could have my wife back. We haven't been to the gym together in forever. She still works out, not as often, and she almost exclusively does YouTube workout vids from fitness creators. We've only had sex like 14 times in the last year. Most nights she lets Celeste sleep in bed with her, and I take the spare room. She says she won't be little forever, and I find it way too crowded. The only form of intimacy that is normal anymore is rubbing on her. I still give her a massage almost every night. Most of the time it's a simple 10 to 15 minute thing. I do the calves, shins, ankles, and feet. Or, once or twice a week I'll do her shoulders, back, low back, and butt. Then maybe once or twice a month I'll do the whole thing plus thighs, chest, arms, and hands. We just call it the full body massage. This is where my resentment festers though, because I keep doing this, even though I receive very little in return. I often wonder if she still sees me as her husband, or if I'm nothing more than a convenience, an in-house butler. I want to tell her I won't do it anymore, I won't pamper her anymore, unless she actually goes to therapy and deals with all her issues. I know why I still do it, it's because I've noticed it's the only way. Our sex life is already on life support, and this is literally the only thing that has led to any form of physical intimacy in over a year. I do it, because I'm just hoping it'll lead to something. I have finally fucking had it with this bitch. Divorce papers being drawn up. I just couldn't anymore. I kept telling myself it was all worth it to keep our daughter in a stable home with both parents. I wanted her to grow up in this house, with the big yard, and all that. I just can't anymore. It was the last f***ing straw. 5 years of this shit for absolutely nothing. She never changed, she never got help, and I am so mad at myself for just taking it for so long. I am a fucking idiot. I have been at this point many times, especially in the last 2 years, where I was ready to just throw in the towel. Then something would happen. Celeste would get sick and I'd realize she needs us both. Or Terra would actually show some interest in me. We would have sex, or go out to dinner. Then I'd think, hey, maybe this is it, maybe things are getting better. What a joke. I just always ended up wasting another 3 months of my life. We have been in a 100% dead bedroom for the last 10 months. I may as well be asking for a decent wage because I am nothing more than a servant with a title at this point. I do almost everything around the house. She treats our bedroom like it's a suite, texting me requests. It's embarrassing how easily you can find yourself just trapped in this, like it's normal. It becomes routine though, and familiar. I tried to get us into couples counseling. She always declined, saying, "We're not doing that bad." Yes, we are. And we have been for a long time. About a year ago, she even told me that if I just stopped talking about it and just made an appointment, she would go. I did just that. She no-showed the first one and claimed to have forgotten. The next 2 she canceled on me last second. When I arrived for the 4th appointment, after doing the first 3 by myself, I looked down and saw she was calling me. I knew she wasn't coming again and I just went and canceled the whole thing. When I told her I canceled all future appointments, she told me that was probably for the best. Anyway, it all came to a head about 2 weeks ago. We had a fight for the ages. It's not anything I haven't tried to talk through before, but I always tried to soften what I said before. This time I didn't soften anything. I just let it all out. It started off minor with a dispute about laundry of all things. That escalated because I was relatively quiet, just giving one-word answers and direct questions. She apparently didn't like this and eventually asked, "Why do you have such a shit attitude?" I don't know why, but I just lost it and said, "Because I'm the only who ever fucking does anything around here, the only one who puts any effort in." She got defensive and started listing off all the things she does around the house. This was comical. Her list literally consisted of doing our daughter's hair before school, and cleaning up her suite, which she doesn't vacuum, dust, or clean the toilet, tub, or sink in the master, so what exactly she calls cleaning I'm not sure. She fell back on her usual tactic of playing the victim, saying, "I'm sorry I'm so awful, I guess." I cut her off on that point, which I think caught her off guard. I just finally said it, "I'm sorry too, because if you weren't I wouldn't be so fucking miserable." We stood there, her in stunned silence. I had always backed off, made peace, but today I was done. I just started unloading everything. You do absolutely nothing. Treat me like a butler instead of a spouse. Show me virtually no affection. I am just fucking tired of it. God, I would never do it, but I totally understand why people cheat now. Well, as of today I'm done. I'm going to take care of myself and Celeste and that's it. At that point I walked out of the room. I was done arguing. She sent me some passive-aggressive texts and tried to provoke me into coming back, but I just ignored them. It was the next night when the fuse that would blow up our family was finally lit. The next day she acted as though nothing had happened the day before. Just completely business as usual. That night I went to talk to her about our plans for the next day as Celeste had a school event we needed to coordinate for. After that was settled, she asked me to rub on her and said, "Make it extra good since you had last night off." I told her, "I'm not rubbing on you, I told you last night I was done doing that. I'm done doing anything until you start putting effort into the relationship." She got angry and said, "What the fuck does that mean?" I kept my cool, go to therapy, show interest in me beyond just asking for things. Initiate some form of intimacy. There's more stuff I can say, but you get the idea. She shook her head dismissively. "Fine, if you are going to be like this, I'll just start getting professional massages." I wasn't able to keep my cool at this point. "Okay, that's fine, we will also be opening the marriage then." She fired back, "I'm not giving you permission to cheat, I'll divorce you on the spot if you so much as text somebody." I said, "Then you're not getting a fucking massage from anybody else either. I will divorce you on the spot if you so much as get a foot scrub during a fucking pedicure." Terra said, "These are not the same fucking thing and you know it." I took a deep breath. "I see no difference. You want massages, I want sex. You made the decision that I was going to be celibate, so I'm making the decision that you no longer get massages." She rolled her eyes. "We are not celibate." I raised my voice again. "In the last few years you could count the times we've had sex on your fingers and still have a few to spare. Meanwhile I rub on you almost every fucking day." "Well, I'm tired of this shit. If you get to fucking decide how much sex I have, I get to decide how often you get a massage." It's a deal breaker, cross it and it's fucking over. There were a few more choice words before Celeste came up wanting to go to bed. I was fuming and left for the spare room. That very weekend my wife had an appointment to get her nails done. This was pretty typical. She's been doing this since before we were together. Usually she's gone for about an hour and 15. When the 2-hour mark hit and she still wasn't home, I began to get angry. It was 3 hours after she left that she came home. I asked her where she was and she just said, "I was out," with a distasteful look, then walked past me. I pulled my phone out and checked the bank account and there was $95 charge to Relax Day Spa, the masseuse in the same fucking strip mall as the nail place. I lost it. This bitch didn't even have the decency to use cash or her credit card. Nope, the fucking joint account so I'd see it. We got into the biggest name calling, swearing argument we have ever been in. I told her I was done. She kept telling me I was acting like a childish asshole. Eventually I just left and headed for my mother's house. That was last week. I am looking for an apartment. Terra will be served this upcoming week. What a f***ing waste. Years of my life I will never get back. As much as I feel hate for her now, I hate myself so much more. Why did I stay for so long? She quit years ago and I just stayed in it. Never ever again. I will never ever remarry. What a stupid fucking system. Binding yourself to another legally, financially. Forever. People change, and not always for the better. I can't wait to be done with this. Celeste will be the priority, but outside of her no one else will ever come before me. Lesson learned. Divorce has been finalized for a few years now. It went smooth enough, neither of us really stuck it to the other. A few things required some arbitration but nothing major. We did both agree that Celeste came first and we wouldn't let our issues get in her way. Honestly, when we first separated it was definitely hard financially. We had to sell the house, cut spending, etc. We both made pretty much the same, and custody was 50-50, so no alimony, no child support for either of us. Each of us ended up in a 2-bedroom apartment. But despite that, I was so much happier. I got out there and reconnected with friends. Started dating again. That was easier than I thought. I think the fact I was still in good shape, especially compared to the typical 35-year-old, helped a lot. I had a few short-term relationships with a few women, but nothing stuck. That was until I met Realm. As you might suspect with a name like that, she is kind of a hippie chick. Her parents are a couple of old hippies as well. We've been together for about 2 years and everything is going fine. We are agreed, marriage is never on the horizon. I've never gotten totally over how my marriage went. It still stings when I think back to it. I do good at hiding it for Celeste. Her mother and I have co-parented well enough over the years, and are cordial at all her events. This has sometimes meant a shared birthday. Most of the years she did a birthday with me and one with her mother. Her 16th birthday was a couple weeks ago. She wanted a big thing, so her mother and I went in together and made it happen. That meant one party. All was fine. The worst part was the usual 10 or 15 minutes Terra's new husband Leo comes over and makes small talk with me. It was getting towards the end and Terra came up and asked if we could talk in private. I agreed and we stepped outside. That's when Terra apologized to me. I listened to her, she had quite a bit to say. When she was done, I thanked her and told her not to worry about it any further. I can't stop thinking about what she told me. She said that about 6 months after we divorced she started to see a therapist, and finally dealt with the loss of her ideal life. She said when she met Leo she told herself she wouldn't let another relationship fall apart because of her. She realized how much I did during those years and is ashamed she let it get that bad. She was mostly apologetic but at the same time told me about how she now pulls her weight around the house, makes her spouse a priority, and understands that setbacks happen, and life is about making the best of what's handed to her. That she realizes all I did to try and help us, and that she now knows to appreciate that in her new marriage and reciprocate it. In the moment, I just listened. It wasn't until later the next night that it sunk in. I couldn't help but feel angry again, angry like I hadn't in a long time. I've felt bitter ever since. I loved her. I tried so hard, and it never mattered. Why couldn't she be that for me? Why wasn't I good enough? Why did it take us blowing up in spectacular fashion for her to finally do anything? Logically, I understand. Sometimes it takes something drastic to get a person out of their fog. But this sucks. I spent years just accepting that things didn't work out between us. That apology, no matter how well-intentioned, just feels like a twist of the knife. I suffered, so old Leo can have it all. Now I feel bitter and depressed all over again. Terra, just the gift that keeps on giving. Merry fucking Christmas to me. Second story. About 2 weeks ago, my roommate, Dave 23 years, invited his GF, Julie 22 years, to stay after she was evicted. Dave asked me if she could stay with us till she found a place beforehand and I agreed. We seemed to get along and she really didn't bother me and seemed to stick to the house rules we had. So all was fine. Now a few days ago I was staying over at my friend's house and my friend happens to bump into Julie's Instagram account and this girl was taking pictures in my room with my clothes, jewelry, shoes, and she even had a couple racy pictures wearing my lingerie. Basically she did several photo shoots in my room with my clothing and things. Of course I lost it, but the worst of it all was these pictures where she was standing on my prayer rug, which is highly important to my faith, with her dirty shoes. She knows how important that prayer rug is to me and my faith and so is well aware of the disrespect and hurt it would cause, so I cut my visit short and went home immediately the next day. I came home to Julie there and told her everything I knew. She immediately started crying and saying that I am overreacting and that I was scaring her with my anger, etc. To be honest, I was shouting, so that could have been scary for her. I told her to get the fuck out and took back my spare key. She grabbed a couple things and left. We agreed that Dave would bring her the rest of her things. An hour later she comes back and goes around the back and tries to enter through the back door. I happened to be in the kitchen and shouted at her to go away. I warned her several times that I'd call the police if she tried to push in. She kept at it and finally got in, and true to my word, I called the police. The police arrived and asked her several times to just leave, but she kept arguing with them and the officer got annoyed and arrested her. She spent the night at jail. And as she didn't have her phone on her, she left it in her car. She couldn't contact Dave. When Dave came home from work later that day, he greeted me like normal and that was not what I expected, so I said, "Have you spoken to Julie?" and he goes, "No." So I told him everything and this man started yelling at me, telling me I was an asshole and took things too far by calling the police. Now I feel like I didn't do anything wrong, but Dave's rant gave me pause. He felt like I should have let him deal with it or something. Did I handle this like an asshole? I don't feel like I did, but maybe my anger is blinding me to see things differently. Clarification: the officers initially asked her to just leave. They tried talking to her for at least 15-30 minutes and explained how they'd rather not arrest her. But she kept shouting and swearing at me in them. Eventually one of the officers told her that if she didn't leave by the count of 5 he'd arrest her. He then counted to 5, she didn't leave as was requested and they arrested her. Some extra clarification: when we found her Insta page it was like 3 a.m. and so obviously I couldn't really drive home that late and instead got back home at around 9/10 a.m. By that time Dave was already at work and honestly I kinda had tunnel vision and he really didn't come into my mind. Also Dave doesn't have or use Instagram, so I doubt he knew. This all happened in less than 5 days. This is an update on my dilemma with Julie and Dave. He truly thought she took one of my kimono robes or something and that I was overreacting. He watched all the recordings and he called me to profusely apologize for not believing me. He spoke to Julie about the recording and questioned the story she was telling him. After some talking she basically told him that she was envious of the things I had and since she was trying to be an Insta influencer she needed to constantly have new things to post. She also said that she felt like me having luxury/expensive lingerie and undergarments was a waste because no one got to see it. And since she couldn't afford lingerie from Brodel, Agent Provocateur, Dia La Bruna, etc., I was being a selfish ass for not sharing and so she felt like she deserved it more. I keep a fairly private online life and don't feel comfortable posting scantily dressed pictures of myself, nor do I wear it outside. I have no issues with others doing so. I just don't. So she wanted to show my things off to people who would appreciate it online since I wouldn't and didn't. She took the pictures with them to get more traffic, etc. And apparently it was a hit since she got more followers, engagement, and was even getting requests for sponsorships for more luxury item sellers on Insta. The craziest part is she was doing this for far longer than the 2 weeks she was living with us. Some of the pictures were taken months ago. Can you imagine my shock that I have basically been sharing undies with her for months, face vomiting? You can't imagine how this is f-king with my mind. Also her roommates got her evicted for the exact same reason. She was stealing things from them and taking pictures with their things while pretending that she's some jet-setting trust fund kid. I am not rich or even comfortable. I don't come from wealth. I just like certain things and saveskimp for months/years to get the expensive/luxury items I have, and I take very good care of my things. Her envy is very confusing to me since she actually comes from money, not trust fund money but still money. She still has the pictures up on Instagram, but Dave was able to get her to delete the ones with my prayer rug. She refused to remove the other ones, and honestly the most important thing for me was protecting what my family has protected for centuries. Dave seems to be truly genuine in his regret. Also it does help that he offered to replace all the things she violated. He also broke up with her. Oh, she has called me several times, blocked her now, and she even did Insta live on why I am a massive bitch face with tears of joy. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed today's story, make sure to give this video a thumbs up and consider subscribing to Red Relationships to never miss a future upload.